off to the coast in Horry County and a history lesson or two.
Right. Horry County is named after a man who became famous during the American Revolution, Peter Horry, who was Francis Marion's right-hand man during the Revolution.
On this episode of Life in the Carolinas.
It's now time to travel to historic Conway, South Carolina, and visit history at the well-curated Horry County History Museum. This museum has plenty of room to present and interpret an important part of American history. It's always a treat to catch up with friends who spend their time preserving our history. Without their faithful dedication, we would not have the opportunity to explore the past and consider the foundations that we all stand upon.
Hello, Carl.
Hey, Walter, how are you?
Great. Welcome to the Horry County Museum.
Well, thank you so much. My gosh, this aquarium wasn't here when I was here last.
No, sir. We put in our aquarium featuring the natural history of Horry County's freshwater riverways.
Oh, wow. So these are the fish that come out of the Waccamaw River?
These are locals, Waccamaw and Petey River fish.
Oh, that's great. Can't wait to see your museum.
Let's go take a look.
All right, let's do it. This is beautiful, Walter.
Yes, sir. It took a while to install, but the end product is great. We all enjoy checking out our fish and sharing it with the public.
Well, you know, Walter, this is what I think about when I think about relics, Indian relics, and that's arrowheads.
So as you see in this gallery, we've got the pottery, which is a very significant part of Native American culture, still is.
Right.
But of course, the arrowheads are the lithics, the points, the spear points, the knives, the tools, and of course, here on the coast, seashells and other tools that might have been used. And through archaeology, we can translate that into what life was like. And then through anthropology, we can translate it through things like our Native American house.
But the house, this is how people would have actually lived.
That's right.
Okay.
This would have been part of their everyday. So things like wooden fish traps or gourds as containers, because not all their containers weren't just made out of pottery. There were other things that make containers out of. Wooden ware and wooden utensils, other bone and antler objects would have been common in their everyday household and everyday use.
So that's incredible, Walter.
Sure, let's go take a look.
Well, Walter, this is really going back to the beginning.
That's right, Carl. Let's go back and visit the very first human inhabitants of Horry County, the people of the Waccamaw. So we might know Waccamaw from a river, but it's also an identity of the people who lived here in this area. And they have a long, long history in Horry County.
So it's really a wonderful part of our heritage.
Certainly is. It's a big part of our heritage.
Yeah, nice. I love that. So this dwelling, is this indicative of how folks would have lived?
It is. We want to represent here in a sort of scaled down version that, you know, wattle and daub house construction with natural materials that would be found here on the coastal plain, or what structures were made out of in these community groups and these townships that Native Americans settled in. It would have been a clay that is daubed over wattle, which is woven branches. So wooden post with woven branches between them, and then this clay packed onto that. And of course it sunbakes and dries. And then of course broom sedge as a grass roof there helps shed the water. And it became very solid dwellings.
So much to learn, Walter.
Always.
So much to learn. Well, let's go see what else you've got here.
Let's check it out.
Yeah.
So, Carl, we've talked a little bit about the Native Americans, some of the first settlers here in Horry County. But we start looking at the United States of America and the early history. We begin with the American Revolution. Horry County is named after a man who became famous during the American Revolution, Peter Horry, who was Francis Marion's right-hand man during the Revolution.
Wow, so we're really talking about American history, aren't we?
Right there from the beginning. So a lot of the soldiers that were here in Horry County, these were settlers, these were farmers, these were turpentine men, these were tradesmen, these were ships builders. These men, when they went to serve in the Carolina militia, they were serving under Francis Marion and Peter Horry. And following the war, as we were Americanizing ourselves, we realized we wanted to name and distinctly identify this area. And so it became Horry County or Horry District in the beginning.
So tell me about this exhibit.
So here in this exhibit, we're focusing on the military history of Horry County. So there's not been an American conflict that didn't involve soldiers from Horry County. So from the American Revolution to War of 1812 to the American Civil War, both World Wars, and of course Vietnam. We also have got a significant history here with the Myrtle Beach Air Force Base. So the Myrtle Beach Air Force Base closed in 1993, but it was an integral part of this community between the years of 1957 and 1993.
Wow. So patriotism is really high here, isn't it?
Certainly is.
Right.
So it's been rooted in military background and military base before the actual base, but in patriotic people who settled here and went to serve their country.
So the room is designed very nicely, and so that takes you, basically, if you go this way, then that's the thing that you see as you go back out into the hall. And you have a wonderful new permanent exhibit there. Tell us about that.
Of course, the Myrtle Beach Air Force Base was established in 1957, I said before. But it actually started out in World War II as the Army Air Corps training. So it was a bombing range here.
Okay.
So we have a very early history beginning with World War II. When the Air Force Base was established in 1957, there began or was created an officers club.
Okay.
And so the Officers Club of the Dedalians was named after Elliott White Springs. Now, Elliott White Springs was another South Carolinian from up next Charlotte in York County, South Carolina, who was in the textile industry. But he was also a World War I ace pilot. So the local chapter of the Dedalians named themselves after Elliott White Springs. So later, after the closing of the Air Force Base, some of the stained glass and artifacts from Horry County in South Carolina and America's military history in the airborne warfare was collected by the Dedalians and put on exhibit. And that exhibit is now permanently installed here at the Horry County Museum.
So history does empower the people.
It certainly can.
Yeah, let's go see more.
Sure.
Well, something makes me think you're going to tell me about tobacco.
Certainly am. So tobacco has been a major player in the agricultural history of Horry County, but it wasn't the only player in the agricultural history of Horry County. So it started out as naval stores. So you folks from North Carolina know all about naval stores in the old Tar Heel state, right?
That's right.
We had lots of naval stores on the coastal plain of South Carolina right here as well.
Right.
Of course, as that passed through there, it opened up to a huge timber industry. So in Horry County, timber became king. We were shipping timber all over the world from the swamps and forests of Horry County.
So the timber and the turpentine business, did that kind of go at the same time?
One passed the torch to the other. So as the turpentine industry went away, you can think of it like this. It was the naval stores industry had a lot to do with wooden sailing boats. Wooden sailing boats went away because of steel-decked boiler-based ships. So no longer sail, now they're steam. So the same steam energy, the same steam technology was applied to sawing and sawmills. So now, when it wasn't feasible in the early 18th and early 19th century to be sawing lumber into boards, we now had mechanized tools that could saw it with steam energy. And so then what happens is this, after this timber is sawed down, we now have big open fields, and we're looking for something to plant in those fields. And so in Horry County, they introduced tobacco, and tobacco became a major economic driving force in Horry County right on up until the 1980s.
Well, Walter, it looks like this is where the fun is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Vacation at the beach, right? Coming down to Myrtle Beach, coming down to Horry County, and having a great time with your friends and family.
So that's the nature you're talking about, but also the sounds of the beach. That's something that I certainly remember growing up, and not only growing up, but now as we're telling stories about the Carolinas, there's no way to talk about the coastal experience and not talk about the dancing. So the shag. So tell us about that.
The Carolina shag, which here in South Carolina, we're going to take credit for.
Okay.
The shag itself, as we know it today, has evolved a lot, but it started out heavily influenced by African-American dancers, vacationers, and workers here on the coast. Horry County was home to Atlantic Beach, which was the only black beach in the state of South Carolina. So it was a place that black business owners had resorts, and blacks could come down to a beach and enjoy a vacation here at the beach when it was all segregated previously.
Right.
So here we had entertainers coming to perform at white and black beaches. We had workers who were working at white beaches and black beaches, and we had families. And they were entertaining themselves as well. And they came up with a form of dance that got quickly adopted by young white college students here,
Right.
and started the evolution into what is now the modern day shag.
Wow. So tell me about this jacket. I just thought this was a wonderful piece of Americana history that specifically speaks to the shag. But is not just one jacket, but this was a jacket style that would have been part of a lot of young ladies' lives.
That's right. So this little lightweight cotton jacket was given to us by a donor who wore it in her summers at the beach. So she went to, as you see, Newberry College.
Right.
And so every year she'd go to the beach, and you stayed at sort of a mom and pop hotel where your mother might write a letter to the owner of that hotel and say, my daughter's staying with you and her curfew is 10 o'clock and you let me know if she violates it. So they were very much chaperoned there, but one of their enjoyments was to go out and dance at the pavilion. And so in the evening time, she'd wear this little jacket. Well, while she was there, she would meet new friends at the beach. And those friends would sign her jacket. And when she went back to school that fall, then she would take her time in the colder winter months and embroider that jacket, embroider pictures on it, and embroider the name so that she could retain those memories of her summer at Myrtle Beach.
What a fun part of the museum. I love this.
Great.
Yeah, let's see more.
Sure. So we'll welcome you to the first floor of the museum, where we have more of our changing galleries, things that are a little more active and change out more frequently than the more permanent galleries upstairs. So Carl, come in and take a look at this.
Wow, a baby mammoth tooth?
And I invite you to touch it.
Okay, I will.
So this is a great exhibit we have, because this was another project with Coastal Carolina University students where they took artifacts from our collection, 3D scanned them and printed them, so you get to feel and experience what the artifacts are like.
Wow.
This isn't the original, this is an exact copy of the original.
So this is actually a baby mammoth tooth, and this is an exact copy?
Absolutely.
Wow. So no other time would you have an opportunity to do something like this unless you were just happened to find one on the beach, right?
Which does happen.
Wow, look at these displays, they're fantastic.
So Carl, this is something a lot of people might not realize, is that the coast of the Carolinas was very conducive to pirating. So this exhibit, again created by Coastal Carolina University students, focuses on the history of pirating and the geography of pirating, with some help from Eastern Carolina University. So you get to come in here and learn about the history of pirating and the fates of some of the famous pirates in South Carolina and North Carolina history.
Nice, nice. Well, that has to build their appreciation for preservation work and for doing what you do.
That's right, and researching it, designing it, exhibiting it, and then getting to share it with our people.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic.
So Carl, we can't leave without talking a little bit about a history of this building. Built way back in 1905 and began its life as a school here in Horry County.
Wow, so was it one of the first schools here?
It was one of the first permanent structure schools here.
Okay.
So prior to that, you had a lot of small one-room schoolhouses that kind of fluctuated with the communities. But here in 1905, the Burroughs School was established. It later became the Burroughs High School, and then was later the Burroughs Grammar School. And then in the late 70s, spent a little bit of time as an annex to Conway High School before it became a county complex, and then it became the museum.
Right. Now, you have an auditorium here as well, right?
That's right. In 1926, an auditorium was added that seats 600 students. So we have programs here at the museum all the time that are what we call mission-driven. So they reflect the history, prehistory, or natural history of Horry County. Everything from historic documentaries to speakers to musical entertainers, you name it, we've got it here in the auditorium.
Wow, that's fantastic. Walter, I've had a wonderful time visiting with you here at history. It's been fantastic. I look forward to my return visit.
Absolutely. Come back anytime.
Thank you so much, Walter. We'll see you later.
Have a nice trip.
Thank you. From what I remember of history, the Waccamaw Indians, the first super highway here was actually the river, right?
Absolutely.